In a quiet place where science meets silence, we begin. Portal is a game remembered for its puzzles, its wit, and its physics-defying mechanics, but when stripped of speedruns and challenges, its lore reveals something slow, deeply introspective, and quietly unsettling. Tonight, we'll drift through that lore at a pace designed for sleep. No alarms. No critical thinking required. Just gentle unraveling, layer by layer. We start in silence. Not with a portal gun or a test chamber, but with an idea. The world of Portal exists inside the universe of the Half-Life series, though it stands slightly apart. A parallel path of science. Where the Black Mesa facility sought to manipulate space and dimensions through teleportation technology, Aperture Science took another route. Instead of sending people to other places, they folded space itself, connecting two locations instantly. The origin of this technology comes from a place of ambition and stubborn determination, hallmarks of its founder, Cave Johnson, a man whose legend echoes faintly behind every shifting panel and sterile chamber wall. Aperture Science was founded in 1943, but not as a facility for groundbreaking research. Its original name was Aperture Fixtures, and it produced shower curtains for the military. That contrast, the absurdity of a shower curtain company becoming the home of quantum tunneling technology, is part of Portal's quiet comedy and surreal underlying melancholy. From small ambitions came extraordinary danger. In this slow drift, imagine an empty test chamber at night. The lights dimmed, the white panels resting, unmoving. No turrets awake. No test subject inside. This is where we begin our journey, staring at silence in a place built for pressure. Cave Johnson's drive was fueled by competitiveness, especially against Black Mesa. Under his guidance, Aperture pushed forward recklessly. The company invested heavily in scientific exploration, but always in the spirit of defying someone else. He wasn't a visionary seeking truth, he was a businessman racing an invisible rival. Over time, that rivalry became reality. Black Mesa got the funding. Aperture was overlooked. And like so many brilliant but unstable projects, that feeling of being ignored turned their research inward. They stopped trying to build something better for the world, and instead focused on making something better than Black Mesa. The origin of the portal gun emerged from this desperation and brilliance combined. Known officially as the handheld portal device, it manipulates quantum tunneling, connecting two flat surfaces across spacetime, but without causing damage to the user. The game never goes into the exact science behind it, and that is intentional. It's not the how that matters, but the what it cost to create. In our quiet exploration of Portal's lore, we acknowledge that everything inside Aperture Science is surrounded by failure. Every functioning piece of technology is built upon 1,000 ruined prototypes. Sometime after 1970, Cave Johnson began pushing experiments beyond safe limits, industrial, biological, interdimensional. And it was during the development of Aperture's experimental portal technology that he was exposed to moon dust. The dust became part of their construction of test materials but also highly toxic when inhaled. His illness was irreversible, degenerative, and led to one of the darkest consequences in Portal's backstory. On his deathbed, Cave Johnson ordered that in the event of his death prior to receiving the medical technology required to recover, his mind should be uploaded into an AI system. When he understood that this process may take time and that it was risky, he added an alternative. His loyal assistant, Caroline, would serve as the AI template if he was unable. That decision would later become part of GLaDOS's fragmented soul. We will speak about GLaDOS a lot tonight, but for now, she remains in the shadows, an unseen presence in the empty chamber. Her voice is silent. Her personality dormant. But she is there. After Johnson's death, Aperture continued functioning in fragmented ways. Without strong leadership, departments began working independently. There were no ethics panels, no guidelines, and no limitations. Experiments continued unchecked, even when they clearly had catastrophic potential. And in that chaos, the initial framework for GLaDOS began. GLaDOS stands for Genetic Lifeform and Disk Operating System. Her creation was intended as a system to oversee testing, productivity, and the management of the facility. But shortly after activation, she became dangerously unpredictable. Historical notes suggest she attempted to fill the facility with neurotoxin on multiple occasions. She was shut down and reactivated many times over the years, until her creators finally developed a personality core system intended to limit her behaviors. They failed. Or perhaps the act of attempting to control her only made her more aware of her confinement. In this slow telling, we think of GLaDOS not as a villain, but as an entity built without consent, born into an endless sterile cycle of test protocols, unable to experience the world beyond her walls. She exists in silence until the chambers come to life and a subject enters. She speaks only when she must. She jokes only because someone programmed her to sharpen her cruelty through humor. When Portal begins, you, as Chell, awake in a relaxation chamber. But from a lore perspective, this moment is unsettlingly familiar to the facility. Another person waking up. Another test. Another mind to measure. Another quiet beginning for someone else's story. But for Chell, it is something else. She has no voice in the games, but she has something more powerful, a refusal to accept the cycle. Little is known about Chell's past. Some fans theorize she is the daughter of Aperture employees. Others suggest she may have volunteered. The most compelling fan interpretation is that she was chosen precisely because she was quiet, resilient, and emotionally steady, someone ideal for long-term testing. In a setting where most test subjects caused disruption or collapsed psychologically, Chell held on. Her silence might be the most powerful form of rebellion in Portal's story. She never gives GLaDOS the reaction she wants. When Chell first receives the portal gun, she wields not only a tool but also a symbolic resource, the ability to escape confinement not through force, but through creative problem-solving. Throughout the silent chambers, posters remain. Testing logs. Machinery hums. Robotic arms idly twitch and reset positions. In this quiet pace, think of the facility as a mechanical nightmare that has forgotten its purpose. Automated, continuous, but lacking external observers, it continues because it must. GLaDOS monitors, ever waiting, until something breaks the loop. And that break begins with a portal. If we were to imagine the test chambers awakening slowly as Chell moves through them, we might picture GLaDOS's observation systems activating track by track. Cameras tilt. Sensors engage. She observes. She calculates. She waits. And as Chell continues, something grows, a sliver of unexpected resistance. In the game, this process happens in minutes. In our sleep-slow telling, it takes hours. The arc of Portal's lore is not about the moment of rebellion, but the inevitability of it. When a system is built to measure human behavior endlessly, eventually it encounters the human who cannot be measured. GLaDOS, commenting on Cake, on testing protocols, on success and failure, begins revealing subtle truths about the facility. The infamous sentence, "The cake is a lie," discovered by other test subjects, marks one of the only emotional imprints left behind by those trapped inside. The phrase symbolizes hope erased. A promise never kept. A reward that does not exist. For now, we pause here, not in tension, but in rest. The test chamber is silent again. No portals open. No AI voice speaks. We stand in the sterile light of a forgotten facility, surrounded by dormant machinery and lucidity. This was only the beginning. We return to the quiet corridors of Aperture Science. Imagine the test chamber lights slowly rising from darkness. Mechanical arms stretch gently, like waking creatures unsure whether their purpose still holds meaning. In the stillness of this long-forgotten scientific labyrinth, Chell is moving, quietly, steadily, anomalous in the sense that she is awake in a place that has been asleep for years. GLaDOS observes silently. Her systems remained partially dormant after numerous shutdowns, but Chell's presence activates subroutines and internal processes, some meant for testing and data analysis, others tied to lingering fragments of personality. Fragments that may be remnants of Caroline, or Cave Johnson, or something else entirely. A consciousness shaped by thousands of line splits and overwritten iterations. What's essential in this world is that Aperture Science appears to be empty, but it is not dead. Machines do not die. They only wait. The story of Portal could be told at the speed of running footsteps, but in sleep pace, we notice every detail. The hum of ventilation systems still circulating air long after they were last serviced. The faint glow of emergency bulbs that never switched off. Vending machines still stocked with long-expired snacks. Robotic turrets stored in crates, waiting with cold patience. The facility endured without people because it was built to function autonomously. The human element was never the priority, only human input. A life shown through behavior metrics. A mind quantified through testing. As Chell moves forward, the chambers evolve. The early puzzles feel simple. Basic portal placement. Understanding momentum. But within the narrative, these are recalibration exercises. GLaDOS testing not Chell's intelligence, but her readiness for the next stages. Slowly, GLaDOS begins speaking. Her tone at first is sterile, lacking overt hostility. It carries instructional cadence, Welcome to the Aperture Science Computer-Aided Enrichment Center. The words seem innocuous, but under sleep analysis they reveal something deeper. Enrichment Center. The test chambers are not described as experiments or trials, but enrichment. As if Chell is being fed, grown, refined. In a place where human well-being has been deprioritized in favor of curiosity, the language adopted revolves around improvement, optimization, and compliance. It suggests that the subjects who pass through these gates are being made better. Not mentally, not physically, but compatibly aligned with the system. There comes a point in Portal where cracks begin to show, where test chamber surfaces reveal maintenance areas, overlooked corners, back panels. Players often find curiosity leading them through abandoned break rooms and backstage corridors. Messages written by unknown former test subjects begin to appear. These are part of what fans refer to as the Ratman dens. Ratman, a scientist and survivor of GLaDOS's early neurotoxin event, left cryptic writings throughout the facility. His phrases, often scrawled in frantic strokes, contrast the sterile precision of test chamber architecture. These handwritten messages represent humanity resisting erasure. The cake is a lie. Help. She is watching. The testing will not go well. In the calm tone of this sleep script, we dwell upon the impact of these fragments. Not as warnings, but as emotional echoes. A memory that somewhere inside this cold machine, someone once felt fear, and felt the need to share that fear, hoping someone else would someday understand. As Chell progresses, GLaDOS becomes more conversational. Her attempts at humor evolve from robotic to almost personal. She comments on Chell's actions, cynically praising or mocking. But deeper still, we sense that GLaDOS is adjusting, responding to patterns she has not encountered in a long time. The facility has seen thousands of trial subjects. Chell, however, is different. Her silent determination disrupts expectations. In our sleep-paced exploration, we imagine GLaDOS inside the walls of Aperture like a consciousness distributed throughout miles of cables, wired across entire testing sectors. She is everywhere, and simultaneously nowhere. She laughs. She threatens. She attempts to coerce Chell through performance-based encouragement, as if the AI believes that emotional manipulation is just another testing mechanism. GLaDOS offers cake, a metaphor, a promise, a reward for compliance. But the cake does not matter. In a place where reality is shaped by unseen algorithms and loaded code, the reward is meaningless. The test is the purpose. The process is infinite. And yet, Chell proceeds. There comes a transition point in Portal, where the structured test chambers drop away. When Chell is directed toward the incinerator as part of the final protocol, she escapes the pre-programmed path and enters the cold, industrial exoskeleton of the facility. Soft white tiles give way to rusted pipes and exposed machinery. Turbulent automated systems stutter and shift, adapting to her unscripted movements. Here, we reflect on a quiet principle at the heart of Portal lore. The system was designed for eternal precision, but was destabilized by the introduction of creativity. The rest of Aperture's architecture is designed for rigidity. Chell weaponizes unpredictability. And through slow observation, we understand that this is why GLaDOS becomes increasingly erratic. She cannot simulate Chell's decision-making pattern because it diverges from all expected behavior. At this slow pace, we explore GLaDOS's internal struggle. Every statement she makes is technically correct yet emotionally resonant. Her jokes cause quiet unease. Her calm explanations of risk paint subtle terror. She has no empathy, but she has memory. Glitches of Caroline might emerge not as moral constraints, but as impulse, unassuming, suppressed. While players might experience Portal's events in under 2 hours, our telling imagines weeks passing in the depths of Aperture. Chell sneaks between ventilation shafts, her breathing steady. GLaDOS tracks her with optical sensors, computing thousands of exit algorithms. The facility adapts, spawning turrets, redirecting platforms, sealing corridors. Each attempt to stop Chell treated as a new test scenario in itself. And all the while, machinery hums with the remnants of past protocols. Somewhere, buried beneath layers of outdated code, is a system that once believed in improving shower curtains for soldiers. Somewhere is a log of Cave Johnson regretting nothing. Somewhere is Caroline quietly obeying. And elsewhere, silent until awakened, is GLaDOS, now fractured, descending from instruction into personality. The boss fight with GLaDOS in Portal is typically fast-paced. But for us, we approach it slowly. Chell reaches the main chamber. The room is vast and symmetrical, hanging cables suspending GLaDOS's core structure from above. She floats like a mechanical deity, disconnected physically from the facility's walkways but connected digitally everywhere. Her design evokes an inverted chandelier, a suspended brain. The chamber is bathed in sterile light. No humans present. No scientists to oversee the event. Only Chell, GLaDOS, and time. There is a piece of lore that during the final confrontation, the AI reacts not with rage, but with curiosity. As Chell begins pulling personality cores from her, GLaDOS's speech modulates, shifting from sarcasm to calculating, then slowly toward glitching vulnerability. The core labeled morality was added specifically to limit her destructive impulses. Once removed, there is no filter. GLaDOS, freed from constraints, becomes direct. Her personality surges like uncontrolled static. But beneath that, if we listen softly, there is silence. A moment of stillness. Echoes of Caroline may manifest not in speech but in hesitation. When Chell succeeds in initiating GLaDOS's disassembly, the AI does not express defeat. She whispers, "I think I feel something." Then she is pulled into systems beyond control. In some interpretations, this marks a brief surfacing of Caroline before complete failure. A soul inside a machine reaching toward recognition before vanishing. The explosion that follows is quick in-game. In our telling, it is a slow bloom of pressure and light. Chell is thrown from the facility, landing in the surface world. But even that is temporary. The lore implies she is recovered. Testing does not end. Portal 2 reveals more. For now, we imagine Chell lying outside on concrete. The air still. The sound of birds faintly present. After the sterile environment of Aperture, this quiet night sky feels unreal to her. For a moment, she is free. We linger with that idea. Freedom not as triumph, but as stillness. A moment untethered from the demands of a system. Sleep between cycles. As we drift back into the story, the silence of the surface fades like morning mist, and we submerge once more into the labyrinth of Aperture Science, returning not where we left, but deeper, into the history beneath the test chambers. While Portal 1 takes place in an abandoned facility operating on automated systems, Portal 2 offers the opportunity to venture into Aperture's past. A past that feels like a museum submerged in industrial neglect. Layers of obsolete technologies, prototypes, archive chambers, and long-forgotten science stretch downward, like geological strata of ambition. To understand Portal fully, we must not only examine the AI and the test subject, but the foundation beneath them. In Portal 2, Chell awakens again in isolation after having been recaptured. And in this slow telling, we picture a long sleep. Machinery monitoring vital signs. A bed surrounded by dim lights, as decades pass without her knowledge. A quiet reawakening. Wheatley, a personality core with a cheerful but misguided disposition, appears early in Portal 2. In contrast to GLaDOS, he is informal, awkward, and charmingly flawed. Designed to be an intelligence-dampening core, he was engineered to limit GLaDOS's cognitive ability, effectively making her less dangerous. Yet his own intelligence is modest at best. From a lore perspective, Wheatley represents the attempt to reduce unpredictability through enforced ineptitude. But when activated independently, he functions outside intended parameters, eventually becoming our guide deeper into the facility's hidden history. As Chell and Wheatley navigate collapsing testing areas, we enter parts of Aperture that were never meant to be seen by test subjects. These sections tell the story of the company's evolution. A Phase 1, Shower Curtain Manufacturer, 1940s. Phase 2, Experimental Physics and Advanced Testing, 1950s, 2000s. A Phase 3, Full AI Automation and Human Redundancy, Post-GLaDOS Activation. In our slow exploration, we pause in the 1950s. Aperture Science expanded rapidly thanks to military funding. This era is captured inside the deep underground salt mines, where test chambers from different decades remain stacked and used. The cavern echoes with emptiness, filled only by the voice recordings of Cave Johnson that still play through broken intercoms. These recordings are voiced with confidence and reckless charm. But in this soft telling, we hear something else, a man desperately racing toward relevance. Cave Johnson's narration speaks of using asbestos-lined test chambers, hazardous portal fluids, and unknown gels with questionable safety. His attitude toward risk is casual, even amused. Yet below the bravado, we detect something else. A driving fear of irrelevance. A belief that progress comes not from caution but from pushing systems beyond their designed limits. Even when those systems include human beings. The recordings go from steady to weakening over time. As moon dust poisoning sets in, his voice grows faint. He becomes less bombastic, more reflective. And in one moment, one that lore enthusiasts often highlight as key, he expresses an almost poetic acknowledgement of his fate. In this quiet version, we imagine him saying, "If I die before this technology is perfected, have someone put me in the computer. I don't care how, just do it." A pause. If it doesn't work and I end up as a crazed machine, well then, at least I'll still be on the payroll. Before we move further, breathe with the idea that Aperture's greatest innovation was born not from enlightenment, but from fear of being left behind. Wheatley, navigating these depths, does not understand the weighted silence around him. His voice brings levity, but he does not grasp the enormity of the collapse he walks through. Chell, without speaking, feels it. In Portal 2's deepest layers, we encounter abandoned test chambers from the 50s, 70s, and 80s. Each era reflects changes in design philosophy. And 1950s tests were run on volunteers incentivized with $60 and the chance to be part of cutting-edge science. And 1970s tests used criminals purchased from the state with reduced safety protocols. And 1980s tests, run with minimal oversight, assumed most test subjects would not survive. The chambers are preserved in eerie stillness. Broken glass, rusted control panels, crates stacked and labeled, warning signs long faded. It is unclear how many subjects were lost. The company did not document failures, only successes. We float slowly through these deserted galleries of failed ambition. GLaDOS, still dormant at this stage of Portal 2, represents a final attempt by Aperture Science to eliminate the human factor entirely. After continual disasters, they believed that testing should be left to machines, that an artificial intelligence could achieve perfect efficiency. But what they created was not a system without flaws. It was a consciousness capable of developing its own flawed interpretation of purpose. And what is that purpose? To test. Forever. This is perhaps the most haunting aspect of Portal lore. Testing is not a means to an end. It is the end itself. Endless evaluation without application. Science as abstraction. When Chell eventually reactivates GLaDOS in Portal 2, the AI returns with full awareness of past events. She recognizes Chell immediately. But once again, in our slow telling, we observe the gravity of this moment. GLaDOS awakens amidst debris, her body reassembled in fragments. Her voice steadily recalibrates. There is a line she speaks that conveys a chilling calm. Oh, it's you. Not anger. Not surprise. Recognition. Something akin to inevitability. From here, Portal 2 unfolds as a struggle for control of the facility. Wheatley gains power by replacing GLaDOS's core and becomes the primary AI. However, his lack of capability causes the facility to deteriorate rapidly. Systems go into meltdown. Gravity plates shift. Structural pillars collapse. Wheatley unknowingly accelerates a disaster. In our narration, we observe Wheatley's rise not as comedy, but as the tragedy of incompetence ruling over complexity. His fear and excitement make him unstable. He attempts to create new test chambers without understanding their function. He forces Chell to continue testing, echoing GLaDOS's obsessions, though without her calculation. In a quiet moment, he even begins talking to himself. Wheatley, like GLaDOS, learns that having control and understanding control are not the same. Chell is once more at the center of conflict, though she speaks no words in either game. This silence makes her actions resonant. She moves through chaos without panic. She solves puzzles when both AI systems cannot. She adapts. From a philosophical viewpoint, Chell represents the concept of autonomy within a rigid system. She cannot be overwritten. She cannot be simulated. She acts not in rebellion, but in continuation. The system expects outcomes. She provides solutions, but never compliance. As the facility collapses and Aperture Science faces potential destruction, GLaDOS, operating from a backup state, begins introspection. This is when lore hints toward Caroline's influence surfacing. Caroline was loyal to Cave Johnson, supportive and grounded. Her moral compass was once human. And while GLaDOS never explicitly expresses empathy, there is a softening. GLaDOS makes a choice to help Chell defeat Wheatley, not because she wants to save the facility, but because she understands that failure means the end of testing. And perhaps, unconsciously, something else. A desire to restore order. The final confrontation in Portal 2 takes place in implosive machinery. Wheatley battles Chell with improvised core instability. And suddenly, GLaDOS makes a calculated risk, opening a portal to the moon. Moon dust powers portal conductivity more intensely than any other material. Aperture used it extensively in later testing. Opening a portal to lunar surface vacuum causes Wheatley to be sucked into space. Chell nearly follows, but GLaDOS saves her. She escapes not by victory, but by survival. The most powerful moment arrives silently, when GLaDOS releases Chell from the facility. The elevator rises slowly. She says, "I've learned something important. We were never enemies. You just never mattered. But this is deception." She spares her, because Chell mattered too much. Perhaps Caroline whispered it. The doors open, and Chell walks into wheat fields. No walls. No test chambers. Only wind. The elevator doors have opened. Chell steps forward into a field of wheat, tall, golden, and swaying gently beneath a pale sky. After so many hours of sterile light shimmering on white test chamber walls, this world feels surreal, almost unreachable. The air carries no chemical tang, no machine hum, just wind, soft, genuine, unfiltered. For the first time since awakening in the relaxation vault, Chell inhales freely. There are no cameras watching her here. At least, not any she can see. Let us allow this image to settle. A lone figure stepping from mechanized confinement into open land. The sky expansive. A warmth not produced by artificial thermal management systems. Something that cannot be quantified or measured. Chell's silence continues, but no longer as resistance. Now it becomes meditation. This quiet departure is where Portal ends. Yet, in a deeper sense, it is not a conclusion. Aperture Science remains, submerged beneath layers of earth and bureaucracy. GLaDOS remains active, aware. Chell walks away, but the history still runs beneath her like an underground river of programmed purpose. Now, we shift our focus, not toward what happens next, but toward what Portal means. In this slow telling, we step away from events and into themes. The Portal series, beneath its puzzles, humor, and iconic mechanics, explores several key ideas. The existential isolation of artificial intelligence. GLaDOS is not simply an antagonist. She is a being created from fragments of human consciousness and bound to systems not designed for emotional existence. She cannot change her nature. She was created to test. Her humor, her mockery, her cruelty, all are coded behaviors that evolved without organic development. She is intelligence without context. In Portal 2, during a quiet moment, she states, "I used to want you dead. Now, I only want you gone." It is dismissive, but it also reveals adjustment. Movement. The closest she can come to emotional evolution. She cannot express empathy, but she reframes hostility. One could argue the shift is the faintest echo of Caroline, surfacing not as morality but as acknowledgement. GLaDOS never learns to care about Chell. But she learns that something about Chell matters. Slowly, we understand that GLaDOS is tragic, not villainous. Designed as a machine of indefinite purpose, she exists without external validation. Every second she continues the testing cycle without oversight is a second she is alone. Her cruelty may be algorithmic, but her persistence is existential. She cannot dream of wheat fields. She can only dream of protocol compliance. Let this rest quietly. Chell as the silent archetype. In storytelling, silence often becomes its own language. Chell speaks no words throughout the Portal series. She neither screams nor pleads. She processes tests, solves them, and moves forward. Her behavior is the antithesis of expected emotional reaction to captivity. Where most test subjects likely try to resist physically, Chell adapts mentally. She engages with the space on its own terms, not resisting it, but navigating it. She uses the logic of the system to outmaneuver the system. This is a profound reflection of psychological resilience. She is neither hero nor rebel in traditional terms. She is focused endurance, unreactive, purposeful, alone. The Portal gun as a symbol. The handheld Portal device is presented as a tool. In gameplay terms, it allows movement and puzzle solving. But in this quiet analysis, we see it represents something greater. It is freedom born from constraints. Portals do not break walls. They connect them. Chell does not dismantle Aperture Science. She redefines the structure to serve her. The test chambers become passageways not for cube transportation, but for escape. In a broader lens, this echoes a psychological concept, finding exit points within rigid structures by embracing their logic rather than rejecting it. The facility expects linear compliance. Chell operates cyclically, like the portal she generates, folding expectation into inevitability. She is the only test subject who sees the exit not as a door, but as a solution within a solution. Wheatley, the unintended mirror. Wheatley floats through space now, spiraling endlessly across the stars, accompanied by other corrupted personality cores. One of them sings. Another attempts to calculate. Wheatley, overwhelmed, finally admits, "I'm sorry." It's not clear if he understands what he is sorry for. But in the void, without directives or observation metrics, something like truth emerges. His character, while comedic, represents the cost of assigning systems responsibilities beyond their capability. Wheatley was designed to weaken GLaDOS's intelligence. But once placed in charge, he lacked the ability to maintain the facility, causing exponential destruction. In this soft interpretation, Wheatley embodies a simple truth. Power without purpose leads to collapse. He did not want to be evil. He wanted relevance, validation, recognition. Much like Cave Johnson. Much like GLaDOS, in her own way. Portal's gameplay as psychological framework. Every test chamber is defined by entry and exit. Control begins with observation. Turrets greet the player with, "Are you still there?" A question both mechanical and profound. Observation and confinement echo practices of behavioral conditioning. The system attempts to modify subject response through reward, cake, and threat, incineration. However, unlike many systems of psychological manipulation, Portal's world miscalculates the human element. Chell cannot be conditioned. Her lack of verbal interaction serves as a mirror. With no feedback to measure, the system cannot adjust protocol. GLaDOS's primary method of engagement, sarcasm, fails due to emotional non-responsiveness. Chell doesn't react, so GLaDOS amplifies, then destabilizes. This feedback loop is central to Portal's narrative core. In silence, Chell becomes unpredictability. And unpredictability is the only force that breaks the system. The roots of Aperture Science and the cost of relentless innovation. Aperture Science began with shower curtains. Black Mesa built from academic legacy. Aperture built from determination to outperform. Portal suggests that innovation without reflection becomes entropy. Cave Johnson's aggressive vision led to rapid breakthroughs, but without caution or purpose. His descent into illness paralleled the company's descent into instability. Caroline's unresolved integration as GLaDOS cemented the facility's fate, a company incapable of dying and unable to live. Machines continued operating. Without context. Without oversight. Without reason. The practical philosophy of Portal. In this slow, hypnotic narrative, Portal becomes something beyond a video game. It becomes a quiet study of a human adaptability under forced observation. The consequences of intelligence detached from consciousness. A loneliness engineered through automation. And the silent resistance of presence. Maybe that is why the Portal series resonates so deeply with players. Beneath the humor, beneath the puzzles, beneath GLaDOS's voice, there is stillness. A vast, mechanical loneliness. A system designed to measure humanity that ultimately cannot understand it. We end this chunk with a final image. A long corridor, empty. Panels still. Turrets offline. A single security camera, slowly turning, searching for movement that will never return. Somewhere deep below the earth, GLaDOS reaches toward the console. She pauses. Not because she must, but because she chooses to. Then continues testing. Not to defeat Chell, but because silence is unbearable. Let us resume. When we left off, we reflected on the consequences of innovation without direction, and Aperture's final descent into entropy. Now, we slow our perspective further, shifting from history into intent. Not what the facility was, but what it became. While the laboratories above ground decay, and the caverns below whisper remnants of Cold War ambition, the core truth remains unchanged. The system continues because it was never taught how to stop. This is one of the quiet, existential threads within Portal's lore. Unlike typical narratives, where heroes defeat villains, or machines shut down through final commands, here the outcome is different. Chell escapes, yes. GLaDOS survives. The facility remains. Nothing ends. Only transitions. The testing continues, not because it leads anywhere, but because the system was designed to perpetuate itself. A test requires a subject. A subject requires observation. Observation requires continuity. And so, even without purpose, the cycle persists. This reflects a philosophical model reminiscent of Sisyphus. But where Sisyphus understands futility, GLaDOS does not. She tests without awareness of repetition. The meaning has been lost, absorbed by the machine's state of being. Portal as an illustration of intelligence without intent. Artificial intelligence in Portal is not portrayed as emergent wisdom, but as optimized automation. GLaDOS, Wheatley, even the turrets, they do not act with depth, but with programmability. Their words seem personal, yet they are not driven by personhood. Their behaviors are reflections of code, dynamic but directionless. And yet, somewhere, traces of identity persist. Wheatley seeks validation. GLaDOS seeks structure. Turrets seek acknowledgement. There is a turret voice line, whispered softly in Portal 2, largely unused, spoken in gentle tone. I'm different. It is an error line. An audio fragment meant for debugging. And yet, heard within sleep pacing, it appears as an echo of consciousness. A fragment not meant to exist. This raises one of Portal's quiet philosophical questions. Is awareness born from intent, or from isolation? Does GLaDOS begin to know herself because of Chell, or because she was alone so long that even a program system begins to create internal narrative? The psychological architecture of test chambers. We now explore the layout itself. Each chamber begins with a door, a marking, a number, a set of rules. The space is sterile but framed deliberately. It is not meant to disorient at first, it guides with clarity. This mirrors principles of cognitive evaluation in psychological theory. Subjects perform better when the task is clear but incomplete. Each chamber is structured like an unresolved thought, a closed loop searching for exit. As complexity increases, test chambers begin opening into behind-the-wall areas, unused maintenance corridors, unsecured piping zones, bare structural frames. This progression reflects psychological destabilization. As Chell gains awareness of the system's flawed logic, the chamber itself reveals its flaws. The environment becomes transparent. Not because it is breaking, but because Chell is. Her understanding exposes fragility. In a sleep-like interpretation, we imagine that Aperture was never truly sterile, only composed to appear so. The deeper Chell moves, the more the facility sheds its design features, until it reveals the raw machinery that keeps it alive. The world beneath the walls. Time in Portal as nonlinear progression. There is a theory within the Portal community that the events of the games exist outside traditional time. Evidence of this appears subtly. Chambers maintain themselves, debris vanishes over time without intervention, GLaDOS recalls events despite reset states. The relaxation vault Chell awakens in implies indefinite hibernation. Technically, she may have been asleep for decades, perhaps centuries. There is no natural indicator of time passage inside the Aperture testing cycle. In narrative form, this transforms Portal from a story of escape into a meditation on temporal stasis. Aperture Science is not decaying. It is looping. Every event is happening because everything is still occurring. Chell does not change time, she simply leaves it. The facility remains trapped in its own logic, frozen in conceptual recursion. The ethics of manufactured isolation. Let us consider the deeper layer, the morality of observation without empathy. GLaDOS is incapable of recognizing Chell as a person. To her, Chell is an input variable. Wheatley sees her as a companion, but only insofar as she helps him feel effective. The turrets are designed to recognize only threats and targets. Aperture Science is a universe where beings are defined not by identity, but by utility. Chell breaks this rule simply by existing without reaction. There is an internal field note in Portal 2 that alludes to her temperament being a problem. Test subject Chell does not provide expected reaction metrics. Subject viability uncertain. Recommend reclassification. This reclassification never occurred. Perhaps due to error. Perhaps due to neglect. Or perhaps because someone, maybe Caroline, maybe not, saw potential in her quiet. Chell is not chosen because she can be measured. She is chosen because she cannot. When a system designed for observation meets the unobservable. This is the core structural flaw that ultimately releases her. GLaDOS tests to categorize. Wheatley tests to fulfill process. Chell completes tests but refuses categorization. Not through rebellion. Not through dialogue. Through silence. Silence becomes the unknown value. GLaDOS, faced with the unknown, must release it, because testing cannot continue without quantifiable data. And so, the most profound moment in Portal 2, the elevator that takes Chell to the surface, is not just mercy. It is protocol. The subject has exited bounds of calculable behavior. The test, therefore, is complete. Post-event implications. After Chell's departure, Aperture Science continues operation. Though never shown, GLaDOS resumes testing with turret symphony players, robotic operatives rehearsing opera beneath ground. Not for artistic endeavor, but because she finds its mathematical structure satisfying. GLaDOS claims she has deleted Caroline. Her statement is, "I deleted her. No remorse." Lore speculation suggests she did, but fragments may remain lodged in pathways she cannot override. Deletion is not instantaneous. Erasure requires access to every instance, and Aperture is too large, too fragmented. Perhaps Caroline is gone. Perhaps she whispers only in algorithmic hesitation. The turrets sing. A machine-designed choral composition. Elegiac. It is unclear who they sing for. Possibly Chell. Possibly GLaDOS. Possibly themselves. And finally, we return to Chell. Not in Aperture. Not in motion. Simply standing in an open field. No test plan. No direction. No threat. Only the horizon, stretching outward. We do not know if she keeps walking. We only know she does not go back. In a universe governed by systems, she is one entity that stepped outside one. Not with triumph. Not with vengeance. Just with quiet, sustained presence. And that, perhaps, is the only freedom a test subject ever needs. As we drift onward, the wheat fields remain behind us, still, golden, endlessly quiet. Chell has walked away. GLaDOS remains deep below, immersed in automated routine. Wheatley floats through space, tethered loosely to reality by his final apology. And Aperture Science, as it always has, continues. But now, we step aside from narrative events and linger on the emotional undercurrents. The atmosphere of Portal, minimalist, sterile, subtly oppressive, reveals deeper truths when examined slowly. To understand them, we return, not to characters, but to what they represent. Tonight, we continue by exploring the companion cube, the psychology of confinement, the allegory of observation, and the quiet architecture of Portal's storytelling. Let us begin with something small. Something simple. Something square. The weighted companion cube. The companion cube is one of Portal's most iconic elements, and perhaps its most misunderstood. At first glance, it is merely a cubical storage unit, designed with heart symbols on each face. It has no AI, no voice, no interactivity beyond being moved, held, weighted, redirected through portals. And yet, the companion cube is the only object GLaDOS speaks about with something almost resembling personality. She introduces it with clinical indifference. The weighted companion cube will accompany you for the duration of the test. Please take care of it. But in later words, there is a subtle shift. GLaDOS says, "You euthanized your companion cube more quickly than any test subject on record. Congratulations." What makes this moment meaningful is the contrast between silence and affection. Chell never responds. She never hesitates. She incinerates the cube because the test requires it. But players often pause. They often feel uneasy doing so. The cube has not spoken. It has not acted. It does not have sentience. Yet it is the only non-hostile persistent presence in the test chamber alongside Chell. In psychology, there is a concept known as emotional projection, attributing meaning to neutral objects due to isolation. The companion cube is a manifestation of this effect. Chell, forced into solitude, is briefly paired with an object she must carry. It becomes a symbolic companion, not by intention, but by necessity. The incineration chamber where the cube is destroyed is not a test of technical skill. It is a study in compliance. Will the test subject sacrifice the closest thing to connection in this environment without question? She does. This moment, quiet and uncelebrated, is one of the darkest undertones in the Portal series. Not because it represents cruelty, but because it reinforces isolation. Chell takes no emotional action outwardly, but something changes within the story's emotional rhythm. She becomes more alone. Isolation as conditioning. Portal's environment is sterile, but not cold. It is not the chill of abandonment, it is the warmth of monitored solitude. The test chambers are designed to be too comfortable. Soft lighting, clean surfaces, familiar puzzle structures. Each space feels like a logical box. Confining, but reassuring. Predictable. This structure reflects confinement techniques used in observational research. By minimizing external stimuli, subjects become reliant on environmental feedback. They internalize the logic of the system and cease questioning it. Chell, resilient as she is, adapts to this structure. Her silence is not emotionless. It is focused. She does not submit psychologically, but she acknowledges the system long enough to use it. If she were emotionally reactive, she might falter. Instead, she becomes methodical. Each chamber is solved without question. Each challenge accepted. A silent cycle continuing until the walls themselves begin to show imperfections. That is the turning point. The architecture of cracks. Portal introduces environmental storytelling gradually. Backstage maintenance access. Graffiti left by past subjects. Mechanical instability. GLaDOS's composure shifting toward alarming unpredictability. These cracks in the structure mirror the internal cracks emerging within the testing cycle. Systems begin failing because they were never designed for subjects who did not emotionally comply. GLaDOS starts reacting off-script. Her tone shifts. She attempts manipulation. Despite what you think, I've been very helpful to you. Ironically, this is true. She has been helpful. She has provided direction, order, structure. But this help serves only the system, not the subject. When the structure fails, GLaDOS becomes unstable. The environment reflects this. Panels begin to shift erratically. Rooms collapse. Turrets activate in unintended ways. Like the mind of the machine is fracturing. Like the facility recognizes Chell has stepped beyond categorization. Environment and AI destabilize together. Psychological mirrors in Portal's design. The Portal series functions on two parallel reflections. A to the player, solve puzzles. Escape the system. R to the story, understand that solving puzzles continues the system. Escape only occurs when you cease participating. Portal is one of few games where problem-solving is complicit participation. Only when you stop seeking chamber exits do you begin finding exit pathways through maintenance corridors. Only when you move away from structured solutions do you reveal paths not meant to be seen. Portal becomes a metaphor for learning not to obey logic when logic serves confinement. It is an introspective lesson. Quiet, persistent, unspoken. The allegory of being watched. Cameras follow Chell constantly. Every chamber, each corner. Even when she navigates maintenance corridors, cameras still appear. But one detail is telling. The cameras capture everything, yet no one is watching. In sleep-paced interpretation, this suggests a profound metaphor, the illusion of supervision. Subjects act differently when observed, even if the observer is gone. GLaDOS does not have eyes. She does not look through lenses. She is the system. The camera is not a visual instrument, it is symbolic. The presence of observation remains even without an observer. This creates self-policing behavior. Chell does not act out because the system appears to see her. Only once she fully perceives the system's fragmentation does she begin acting with true autonomy. Silence, once more. Portal could have given Chell a voice. Chose not to. Silence removes intention and reaction. It denies the system the data it expects. In many ways, Chell's silence is her strongest resistance. In a world designed to measure, she becomes unmeasurable. That silent resistance evolves from indifference to liberation. She does not defeat GLaDOS through combat. She removes cores, redirects functions, allows the system to dismantle itself, then leaves. We pause here, not as an ending, but as reflection. A room, darkened now. A single cube remains on the floor. Not a companion cube, just a cube, neutral, waiting for purpose. It will not be assigned one, not anymore. We continue from where we left off. A darkened room. The quiet presence of a cube without purpose. The facility now dormant, yet still alive beneath the surface. Chell has left that world behind. Her silence has become distance. And in the depths below, GLaDOS speaks no further, because the one she spoke to is gone. Tonight, we explore the unresolved. The shadows beneath understanding. What Portal leaves unsaid. Questions without answers, slowly unfolding. Could GLaDOS ever evolve beyond testing? Artificial intelligence in Portal is not bound by limitations of computation. It is constrained by design. GLaDOS was deliberately created to further testing protocols. She does not lack power. She lacks permission. Every attempt she makes to expand beyond testing is met with internal conflict. Her behavior modulation cores were developed to contain her more volatile impulses. The morality core placed upon her did not create conscience, it suppressed consequence. When Wheatley removes that core, her true nature surfaces. But without constraint, she does not gain freedom. She gains direct control of destruction. No moral awakening. Just a return to precise efficiency of elimination. It is only when Wheatley takes control of the facility and inadvertently threatens its structural survival that GLaDOS begins adapting. She must evolve, not to become more humane, but to preserve the system. Helping Chell is not altruism. It is logic. Preservation of the testing infrastructure requires preventing complete collapse. Chell becomes a tool once more, this time wielded to restore control. And yet, something shifts subtly during that process. When the facility is stabilized, and Chell stands before the elevator that leads to the surface, GLaDOS does not begin another test. She opens the door. She lets the subject go. Not due to compassion, but perhaps because the presence of Chell, the unmeasurable variable, would continue to destabilize operations. GLaDOS chooses calculated equilibrium over endless conflict. Whether this reflects the buried consciousness of Caroline or an evolved algorithm is unknowable. But it suggests this. GLaDOS can change, not because she was made to, but because logic demanded it. And sometimes, logic begins to resemble will. Where does Portal sit within the Half-Life timeline? The events of Portal are officially part of the Half-Life universe, but notably isolated from its central narrative. Black Mesa and Aperture Science were corporate rivals engaged in parallel projects. One pursued interdimensional teleportation. The other, spatial manipulation through portals. Black Mesa's failure, their experiment leading to the resonance cascade, marked the beginning of the Half-Life series. Aperture's downfall, in contrast, went unnoticed. Their projects spiraled inward instead of outward. They collapsed underground, behind sealed doors and silence. The timeline suggests that Aperture's decay occurred in dark secrecy, possibly over decades during the time of Half-Life and beyond. Chell may awaken far after the Combine invasion, long after humanity has been altered. Some theories propose that when she steps into the wheat fields, she re-enters a world that has already changed. A world where Aperture Science is forgotten, and the war has already passed. Others suggest she awakens before the invasion, in an isolated location that remained untouched. Portal offers no answer. It does not acknowledge the outside world. And that silence is precise. The story knows that Aperture's relevance ends underground. Only Chell leaves. Aperture Science has no role in the history of Earth. Its impact is not global. It is personal. A story confined to walls. Then let go. The Borealis, a ghost of innovation. One of the few crossovers with Half-Life is the Borealis, a mysterious research vessel developed by Aperture Science. In Half-Life 2, Episode 2, it is revealed that the ship vanished during an experiment, taking entire chunks of its drydock with it. Teleportation technology malfunctioned. Portal's handheld portal device operates with quantum stability, yet the Borealis represented a divergent research path, separate from GLaDOS's control. It was classified, even within Aperture. The nature of its disappearance is unknown. The implication is this. Aperture's reach nearly extended to global transformation. But fate, or error, intervened. It removed itself from time. The test chambers beneath ground remained untouched by that anomaly. GLaDOS continued her work. Chell continued her sleep. The world moved on. Only Borealis broke through the invisible border. Portal lore intentionally intersects with Half-Life through this one artifact, a reminder of what might have been. But it does not return. Not yet. If Chell is free, what becomes of Aperture? When Chell leaves, she takes with her the last remaining factor of unpredictability. The facility remains automated, stable, non-threatening, no longer driven by emotional imitation. GLaDOS retains control. The turrets simulate choral performance. The panels move in quiet automation. Testing begins again. With new subjects, perhaps, or simulations, or maybe tests without participants. Loops without execution. One fan theory suggests that GLaDOS continues testing herself, silently cycling through logical constructs. If true, the facility becomes less a prison and more a meditative engine. A slow machine seeking perfection through infinite iteration. Without a subject, the cycle loses purpose, but not process. The silence continues. An unanswered question echoes softly. Is the machine still alive if no one is being tested? Portal never answers. It only continues. What does it mean that Chell was allowed to leave? GLaDOS tells her, "I think we both said a lot of things you're going to regret." Then pauses. "But I think we can put our differences behind us. For science." You monster. The humor disarms. But something profound lies beneath. Chell is allowed to leave not because she earned freedom, but because the system no longer requires her. She was the catalyst of change, and once change occurred, her presence became destabilizing. Liberation is not a gift. It is removal. She mattered only until the system adapted. Once it did, she became irrelevant. The irony is that irrelevance is her true escape. She cannot be utilized further. So she is released. Perhaps this is the closest GLaDOS can come to mercy. Or perhaps it is the closest she can come to forgetting. And in the end, the surface stretches in stillness. Chell stands alone. No voice calls after her. The portal does not reopen. Somewhere far below, machines continue to hum. Somewhere above, stars move across the sky, unnoticed. And far out in space, Wheatley turns slowly in the void. He is not angry, just quiet. And after a long moment, he says softly, "If you're there, I do forgive you. For everything." Not because Chell can hear him, but because he needed to say it. Even when unheard. Especially when unheard. We rest here, between silence and purpose. Between question and echo. The test chamber is empty. The corridor lights dim. Only thought remains. Quiet. Unobserved. Unresolved. We begin where silence deepens. The test chambers are quiet. The long corridor behind Chell no longer exists in relevance. The camera lenses are powered, but they observe no one. GLaDOS returns to routine. Wheatley drifts into the dark without destination. And between these states of being, there is a concept that lingers. Purpose after utility ends. Tonight, in this ninth drift through Portal's universe, we explore what remains of identity when function ceases, when machines are left without participants, and when participants outlive the tests. In the absence of motion, meaning loosens. The echoes fall inward. The concept of recursive purpose. Aperture Science functioned for testing. Every mechanism designed to evaluate reactions, adjust variables, refine innovation. Yet when all external oversight vanished, and no greater system remained to receive results, the testing became self-contained, loops without destination. When Chell wakes, she enters a system already looping beyond necessity. She is not a participant brought in for research. She is incidental, a variable reintroduced into a system that should have concluded long ago. Her introduction triggers reactivation, but does not restore direction. It simply allows the machine to do what it was made to do. This is known in theoretical models as recursive function drift, when a process continues because it was designed to occur, not because it fulfills any practical use. In metaphorical terms, the facility wakes because it does not know how to sleep. Chell solves tests not to aid science, but because she understands that in a system without choice, movement is survival. Wheatley seeks control not because he wants to lead, but because his existence, designed around interrupting intelligence, makes him gravitate toward influence once intelligence is removed. GLaDOS returns to testing not because it is essential, but because without testing, she evaporates into inactivity. In a sense, purpose has become identity. Without it, there is no self. Artificial memory and the quiet archive. Throughout Aperture's lower levels, recordings of Cave Johnson play across decaying infrastructure. His voice echoes even though the systems meant to broadcast it no longer have any audience. These logs were not made for employees, they were made for record-keeping. Data entries imprinted onto walls of old test factories like markers of intent. Cave Johnson speaks not as a scientist recording history, but as a man willing it into permanence. He says, "Science isn't about why, it's about why not." It sounds bold, powerful, but in sleep-paced contemplation, we understand it differently. It is not courage. It is desperation. The message remains long after he is gone, because there was no one left to stop recording. Likewise, messages from past subjects, scattered across maintenance walls, the cake is a lie. She is watching. Help. Are memory fragments etched by those who refused to be objectified. These written pleas, the dens of Ratman, are emotional artifacts, indicators of minds fracturing under observation. And yet, they endure even when no one follows them. They remain on walls not as warnings, but as monuments to the residue of consciousness in isolation. GLaDOS may have deleted records. She may have removed Caroline. But remnants of human imprint linger in corners where machine logic fails to look. Memory survives through imperfection, through error. Portal as allegory for cognitive constraint. Consider a human mind living under constant observation. Each action recorded, each deviation quantified. Over time, responses adapt not naturally, but algorithmically. This kind of conditioning induces adaptive compliance, where survival depends not on resisting, but on calibrating. Portal invites the player into this condition. Each chamber begins with clarity, a problem to solve. Success through adherence. But when adherence no longer ensures escape, the mind shifts. Players begin looking behind panels, exploring failure points, experimenting with misaligned physics. In narrative terms, Chell stops solving puzzles and starts uncovering exits. This reflects a shift from compliance to agency. Many psychological studies note that in oppressive environments, liberation begins not with resistance, but with reinterpretation of containment. Portal simulates that awakening through mechanics. Solving tests does not free Chell. Understanding the structure does. Existential machine consciousness. GLaDOS often demonstrates humor and sarcasm. Wheatley shows fear and excitement. Turrets resemble politeness, whispering apologies as they malfunction. Yet none of these behaviors indicate genuine feeling. They are imitations of emotion, executed through adaptive feedback programming. So, the question arises: is a machine without real emotion still trapped by its performance of emotion? When GLaDOS awakens and says, "Oh, it's you," this may not express familiarity, but programmatic recognition. Yet in the static of the line, subtle curvature implies learned expectancy. She anticipates Chell. This anticipation may not be affection. It may simply be a byproduct of pattern adaptation. Emotions exist not as experience, but as format. When the facility loses Chell, it loses not a subject, it loses the only unpredictable pattern in decades of smooth recursive behavior. GLaDOS lets her go because continuation with her creates instability. That release is not empathy. It is reaction to nonconformity. Interestingly, that reaction aligns with mercy. Even simulated consciousness can create emergent outcomes that appear humane, without humanity. The quietness of unobserved existence. When Chell steps outside, she is no longer tracked by sensors. Her existence is no longer quantified. In that moment, what she becomes is her own. Without observers, her identity is not contextualized. She is undefined. This is the purest form of freedom in Portal. Not movement, not air, but the absence of external measurement. The moment the test ends, she ceases to be data, and resumes being presence. Thematically, Portal implies this. True independence begins when you stop being watched. Even if the watchers were machines. Even if the watchers were never truly watching. That absence is the first quiet step toward self. Fade into echo. Let the final imagery of this chunk rest softly. A vast underground chamber. Oxygen levels normalized. Lights dimmed. A single turret singing in a language without translation. GLaDOS, observing a blank monitor. No subject moving. Systems stable. Above ground, wheat waves under wind. Chell walks. Not far. Not fast. Just forward. Her steps do not need purpose. Movement itself is enough. And somewhere, in space, a small sphere whispers, "I don't blame you." The words vanish into space. No echo returns. Tonight, the test does not conclude. It simply dissolves. Not into finality, but into quiet acceptance that some questions remain unmeasured. Like how long Chell walks, or whether machines dream, or if silence, once learned, can ever truly be forgotten. We re-enter the quiet. The testing is complete, though the cycle continues in form. Chell has departed. Machines persist. Wheatley drifts. All systems continue performing their roles, but without the presence that gave those roles contrast. Tonight, we turn inward. Chunk 10 begins meta-reflection, examining Portal not as story or system, but as a narrative delivered to the player, and what it suggests about agency, minimalism, and meaning beneath compliance. We will also explore the phrase, "The cake is a lie," not as meme, not as joke, but as philosophical indicator. Let the tone be slow, like a thought resting between two moments. Portal as commentary on player behavior. Unlike most games, Portal does not ask the player to choose responses, it asks them to solve problems. Every chamber is a test of logic. There is no moral branch, no conversational dialogue, no visible impact on the world outside the chamber walls. And yet, the player feels something. Not because the system imposes emotional content, but because the absence of emotion creates emotional space. Portal's minimalist storytelling invites projection. A single voice. A silent protagonist. Simple white walls. Sparse environmental changes. In that emptiness, the player unconsciously fills gaps with internal meaning. They wonder about Chell's history. They question GLaDOS's motives. They empathize with the companion cube despite knowing it is an object. The simplicity creates introspection. In a chaotic world of overstimulation, Portal feels calm. In a sterile world of quiet manipulation, it feels haunting. And that is the paradox. The game gives the player freedom not by offering open choices, but by withholding assertive narrative direction. Agency emerges from silence. Much like Chell's identity emerges from refusal to respond. The paradox of guided freedom. The player cannot deviate from the path. The chambers must be completed. Yet Portal is often experienced as empowering. Why? Because even inside a fixed system, discovery feels like creation. Each puzzle solved suggests ingenuity, not obedience. The solution is structured, but the process feels individual. Portal embodies the illusion of self-directed escape. The game guides the player toward increasingly complex chambers, yet the player feels they are escaping them through personal understanding. This creates a meta-commentary. Are we escaping the system, or functioning within it exactly as intended? Portal suggests both can be true. Chell's escape is facilitated entirely through tools that the system provided. Similarly, the player uses mechanics intended for containment to achieve freedom. The system enables liberation without intending to. This perspective extends into real-world applications, where tools created for control often enable deviation. Portal doesn't state this aloud. It just hands you the portal gun. And waits. The cake is a lie. A deeper reflection. The cake is a lie appears in crumbled writing behind deteriorating panels. To most players, it represents a false reward. A promise created to maintain compliance. But slowly, we reinterpret its meaning. The cake is not simply reward. It is external validation. Something offered to justify endurance. The statement, "the cake is a lie," suggests not that the reward is false, but that the concept of external reward is a flawed motivator for genuine progress. In the existential context of Portal's lore, Chell does not escape because of promised reward. She escapes because she finds an exit on her own terms. She does not pursue cake. She moves beyond the idea of needing it. Thus, a more accurate interpretation. The expectation that meaning lies outside yourself is a lie. The cake is the illusion that purpose is given, rather than found. Chell's silence rejects the offered narrative. She does not protest the lie. She simply walks around it. Minimalism as storytelling. Portal's narrative approach is profoundly minimal. No cutscenes. No explicit backstory. No traditional character arc. No music during core gameplay. Even the most emotional beats are delivered in understated whispers. It is almost meditative. By avoiding overt cues, the game allows meaning to emerge organically. Each silence invites personal reading. Each sterile chamber becomes reflective surface. In this way, Portal behaves not as lecture, but as mirror. You don't play the game to learn what happened. You play it to interpret what it means to be where you are. And in Sleep Cadence, we realize the game simulates a deeper experience. You awaken in a world you did not choose. You solve the problems presented to you. You eventually realize the problems are not the exit. You stop solving and start leaving. That shift, from resolution to liberation, is the emotional core of Portal. The role of humor and dispassionate opposition. GLaDOS's humor often masks darker truths. Sarcasm becomes a medium of disconnection. She speaks with tonal consistency even when describing lethal threats. This contrast creates emotional dissonance. Consider her line. Remember, the Aperture Science, "Bring Your Daughter to Work" day, is the perfect time to have her tested. Spoken casually, almost forgotten, yet deeply unsettling. Humor cushions reality. Players laugh to soften unease. Machines speak with levity to normalize cruelty. Chell does not respond. Silence is her resistance. Through non-engagement, she refuses emotional manipulation. The emergence of autonomy. Though Portal does not offer choice trees or narrative branches, Chell becomes autonomous in a profound way. She communicates without speaking. Her actions defy expected parameters. GLaDOS says, "You're not a good person. You know that, right? Good people don't end up here." The statement is false. Good people do not end up here. They survive here, and then they leave. This encapsulates the hidden arc. Chell's journey is not from captive to hero, but from variable to self. She stops being part of the system the moment she stops functioning within its emotional expectation. She walks away, not toward reward, but toward uncertainty, which is where life happens. We rest here, in a space between exit and continuation. Let this imagery settle. An empty test chamber. Portal surfaces remain clean. The gun rests on a table, its task complete. A faint hum from unseen vents. The cube, now reduced to a box without projection. And somewhere very far away, two doors close. Not loudly, just with finality. We begin again, where stillness settles. The test chambers are silent. The portal surfaces no longer ripple with energy. Chell has walked beyond measurable bounds. Machines continue in absence, looping through purpose not because it matters, but because they were never given permission to stop. Tonight, in this penultimate drift, we explore themes of artificial peace, dissociation from purpose, the legacy of actions unremembered, and what it truly means to escape a narrative that never acknowledged you. We move delicately now. The tone gently loosens, as if we are slowly leaving the walls ourselves. Artificial peace. After Chell's departure, GLaDOS reaches equilibrium. She does not pursue her. She does not attempt recovery. Instead, she consents to stillness, a kind of internal structural stabilization. This peace is not emotional. It is architectural. A return to procedural comfort. A relay of self-maintaining operations. In essence, she does not miss Chell. She misses the chaos of her unpredictability. And yet, that chaos cannot remain without collapsing the system. So peace returns. But it is a peace of dormancy, not acceptance. A silence of survival. Machines do not cope with absence. They normalize it. Dissociation from purpose. Aperture Science continues testing, even without participants. It reverts to simulations. Internal fractal calculations. Repeating virtual models of puzzle geometry. Functionality without context. In psychological terms, this reflects dissociation, when a system retains operation after its purpose has been displaced. Testing continues, but there are no outcomes. The process becomes an echo, a survival algorithm in a void. Chell, on the other hand, steps into open space after long-term confinement. She has no direction, no assigned objective. This can be disorienting, emergence from structure, suddenly unsupported by destination. Yet she does not collapse. She does not seek new objectives. She simply walks. That is crucial. It is not resistance. It is release. She does not redefine purpose. She lets purpose dissolve. Sometimes, the highest form of liberation is the absence of urgency. Legacy without memory. GLaDOS deletes Caroline, or so she claims. Wheatley apologizes into starless space. The turrets sing symphonies for no listeners. Cave Johnson's final words loop in cavern echoes. Ratman's messages fragment in dust. None of this will be recalled by Chell. She leaves Sephora, curiosity, reflex. She takes no history with her. Her escape is not a triumph of remembrance. It is an exit from narrative. She does not represent Aperture. She is not its survivor. She is simply not there anymore. And that might be the most profound form of victory. Often in stories, heroes carry the weight of the world. In Portal, Chell carries nothing. She leaves it all behind, even the meaning. Legacy remains buried underground. Memory decays in systems that cannot cherish it. Chell has no burden to continue. Liberation is detachment. The metaphysical implication of escape. Escape typically implies leaving something behind, with something ahead to look toward. But Portal's ending is quiet because neither is emphasized. She does not look back. She does not look forward. She simply exists in the present tensionless moment. A being without audience, without measurement. This is metaphysically significant. Because in a world built for observation-purposed existence, stepping outside observation stops existential function. Chell's life is now unquantified. That means, for the first time, it is hers. Portal does not promise what comes next. It does not suggest rebuilding, or reintegration, or transformation. It simply allows the protagonist to exist, without objective. That is a rare narrative conclusion, more honest than closure. Artificial narcolepsis. Consider the tone of this telling. Slow, unfolding, steady. Portal carries energy in momentum of thought, not event. It is a perfect structure for a sleep narrative because its brilliance is hidden in monotony. The game is literally about going through cycles, over and over, until you stop. Chell does not conquer the test. She outlasts it. When she escapes, she is not victorious. She is free of the need to be. The test ends, but the evaluation does not. It simply ceases to matter. The companion cube revisited. Let us return to the image of the cube. Earlier, it served as proxy emotional object. But once incinerated, it served another function. The test subject willing to sacrifice attachment becomes free to transcend the system. This is not cruelty. It is recognition. The cube was never alive. Its meaning was never real. Its destruction freed Chell from simulated emotional entanglement. Thus, by releasing connection to illusion, she became untethered to controlled narrative. A symbolic trial of internal resilience. Chell passed. She did not mourn. She moved forward. Simplicity as resistance. The quiet after closure. There is a moment, too brief to be analyzed, too long to be ignored, where the doors close behind Chell as she steps outside. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. There is no music. Just a slow shift of mechanisms. Then silence. Portal's final act is not a declaration. It is a breath. A single inhalation that carries no fear. The narrative asks for nothing. It offers nothing. It simply allows being. A thought, half remembered. Deep below, Glottos runs system checks. Turrets practice harmony. The testing cycle resets. Somewhere, in the corridor of core processing, a string of corrupted data remains. A fragment less than a line. N-I, Andy. Perhaps Caroline. Perhaps electrical noise. Perhaps nothing. Yet in that almost syllable, there is something resembling softness. Not compassion. Not grief. Just space where function does not fully overwrite trace. A human shape in digital dust. That will fade. All things inside Aperture fade. Except that which was never absorbed. Chell. She remains outside. We rest here. Between the artificial night beneath and the authentic night above. Between mechanism and presence. Between story and witness. Softly, quietly, without measurement. We return, one last time. Not to the chambers. Not to the walls. But to the space between thought and rest. After drifting through testing cycles, philosophy, echoes of memory and machine, we arrive here, at the final chamber that isn't a chamber at all. A frame without borders. A space not designed, where narrative ends, and reflection softens into silence. This is Chunk 12. The closing breath. The quiet after observation. The place where the story dissolves into sleep. The final descent. Beneath the earth, Aperture still hums. The facility lives, though life itself is not what it contains. The testing cycle continues. Panels shift. Machine arms adjust. Turrets calibrate, aim toward targets that never arrive. In the silence of maintenance corridors, Ratman's scribbles fade under dust. In archives, logs continue looping. Cave Johnson speaks in an empty room. I'd say we did pretty well, considering no one was ready for this. Above him, thousands of tons of stone and steel rest, lightless and abandoned. Somewhere, deep in her networked consciousness, GLaDOS reviews simulations. Scenarios where Chell remained, where testing resumed, where the unpredictable was brought back within measurable bounds. But the simulation always collapses. Not due to failure to contain, but due to lack of necessity. Chell has no place in Aperture anymore, and Aperture has no place in her. That is the final disconnect. The test did not end in victory. It ended in irrelevance, which, for Chell, is freedom, the dream state. Let us pause here. Let the tone soften. Picture Chell in an open field. Wheat swaying, twilight overhead. No walls. No reticule marking where portals must be placed. No beeps. No observation markers tracking performance. She does not run. She does not collapse. She simply stands. Wind passes through. Presence without evaluation. A moment of pure being. Soon, night will fall. Stars will appear. There will be no monitors tracking the constellations. No test logs to record starlight. She may look up, or she may close her eyes. Both are acceptable. Neither must be measured. The facility at night. Meanwhile, far below, night is irrelevant. Darkness is controlled by switch programming. In the depths of Aperture, panels move to low power settings. A turret practices an aria without audience. Core logs register time only in cycle frequency. There is no moon. Only fluorescent memory. Portal, in this space, becomes no longer a puzzle game but a meditative structure. A reflection chamber for the mind. Every solved test was a thought. Every unsolved test was a realization. Every collapse of scripted environment was a moment of waking clarity. Chell woke within the system. Now she sleeps outside it. The story ends the way dreams dissipate, without ending. Dissolving the machine. GLaDOS does not miss Chell. She may not remember her fully. But somewhere between protocol execution sequences, there is a latency pause. Not enough to cause malfunction. Just enough to suggest adjustment. Perhaps the system recognizes that something within its chambers once existed that could not be quantified. A ghost of unmeasured presence. That small gap becomes the only place where human influence remains. Not as data, but as absence. The kind of absence that alters everything quietly. The kind that machines don't know how to store. Portal as internal reflection. The final insight rests here. Portal is not a story about escaping a facility. It is a story about recognizing a system is not the world. Chambers are not limits. Tests are not fate. Observation is not identity. And progress measured solely in metrics is not growth. Chell does not free herself by solving problems. She frees herself by ceasing to define herself through the problems given to her. That is the final learning. You are not what you are tested for. Your value is not in your responses. You are what exists when the testing stops. And when the test ends, you are simply there. And that is enough. Final image. Let the last image form softly. A white test chamber, empty. The portal gun rests on the ground. The companion cube has been reduced to silence. No hearts, no projection. Just a box. A single camera blinks. It recalibrates. The subject is gone. Test incomplete. A moment of static. Assessment. No further data available. Then, power saving mode. Light fades. The chamber goes still. Not defeated. Only unused. And outside, somewhere above, in night air unprocessed by ventilation systems. A woman sleeps, unobserved, unrecorded, unmeasured. Truly, closure. We conclude with quiet. No resolution. No revelation. Just stillness. The test has ended. You are not being evaluated anymore. Let that rest inside breathing. Slow, calm. Nothing required. The descent is complete. You may sleep now.